And welcome to the latest episode of the Built Environment Marketing Show, hosted by me, Ayo Abbas. And this year is actually my 25th year of working in the construction industry in its various guises. So I thought, who better to interview than my very first boss? So my guest today is Anna Hern, and she's from an agency called Ridgemount. And Anna, would you like to introduce yourself and I guess how we know each other?
Well, the fact that you've just said 25 years in the industry and I was your first boss has suddenly made me feel horribly old. But there we are. Yes, you came to work for us when I was a director at CIB, I think, and you were an account executive starting in your first job. Is that right?
That's my first job after uni, yes.
Yeah, excellent. Now that's how we know each other.
And what are you doing now?
I owned Ridgemount for 15 years and I've just sold it to Kate, who has been working for Ridgemount for 10, 15 years. Not going anywhere for a bit. I'm hanging around for the next few years, but we just wanted to make sure that we'd sorted out the future direction for Ridgemount. So that's what we're doing.
And what does Ridgemount do?
Ridgemount is in a state of transforming itself. Ridgemount started as a media relations agency when we were called Ridgemount PR, but we introduced digital marketing fairly early on in the trajectory of digital marketing. We were pretty much ahead of the curve in construction industry marketing at the time when we started doing paid social and digital content sharing. And that's mainly what we do now. So we've dropped the PR from our company name to focus attention on the fact that we don't just do media relations. We still do media relations, but it's really not the bulk of what we do anymore. And I think we're probably going to come on to why not later in this chat.
Really? Okay, no, that's a brilliant introduction. So do you actually remember anything from working with me? Because it was a while ago. I remember stuff still at CIB.
You said in a little brief you sent over before this podcast, you said, what do you remember about me when I started? And the first thing I put down was your laugh.
That still happens.
That still happens. It still happens, absolutely. So that's what I remember, your enthusiasm and your just general liveliness and noise once you settled in.
Yeah, once I find my feet, I can be quite noisy. But before that, I can be I just look. But yeah.
That's great when you have lively people who are not afraid to say what they think. That's the sort of people you want to work with.
But I mean, I guess one of the things that fascinates me about, I guess, the construction industry and I did a LinkedIn post, which was literally from my second week at CIB with me sitting on that Williams car, which I will share in the show notes. But what fascinates me is the way the industry is it's changed, but then it's also the same, right? It's there's so many things that's still consistent from, even 25 years ago or even before that. But there's also, I guess, marketing's changed, the industry's changed. You've got new channels like digital and stuff. So what changes have you seen in the industry?
Well, all those years ago, when you joined what was basically an integrated agency, wasn't it? And we had PR team on one side and advertising team on the other side. And they were two very different disciplines. And they didn't really, it wasn't unusual for us as a PR team to be working with a client who used a separate advertising agency. The two were seen as very separate. This is advertising, this is PR, and everybody knew what the difference was. And I would say the main difference is that things have changed to the point where that distinction is far more difficult to identify now. What's advertising? What's PR? I don't know. Do you? And so I think that's probably the main difference. So what's changed has been the channels you can use, the way of getting your message to your audience. But the fundamentals about understanding the messaging, understanding your audience, knowing how to communicate, those fundamental skills are still the same. What's changed is the way you get to the people you want to talk to. That's what's changed.
Yeah, and I think one of my biggest observations is just that there's just so many. It's there's so many different channels now. It's it's a much bigger landscape to actually cover, isn't it? And it's picking the ones that are relevant and making sure you're using them in the best way possible, and you're getting the most out of that channel. And then what makes it even harder, I think, is also that thing about the channels are also ever evolving as well. So it's how do you keep up? How do you stay relevant? How are you doing the right thing? I think that's the biggest thing for me.
Well, that's what makes it fun, isn't it? You talk about the channels evolving, and of course they do, and they do change, and there are more of them. But you could argue that back in the day, we were making choices between different publications and different publishing houses, and now we're making a choice between a different platform or channel. The choices are still there, maybe made on different assumptions, but you're still making choices all the time because you never have enough budget to do everything. So it's still a question of prioritizing and working out what's going to work most effectively for you.
So what do you think that great clients do differently?
What do great clients do differently as opposed to
ones that aren't so great?
Okay. I was thinking about this, and I think the difference in terms of working with clients and achieving their objectives, the fundamental thing that I think a really good client has is consistency. So they know what the vision is, they're not changing their mind every 2 seconds, and they give a campaign time to evolve and to work. And also that they're clear in direction. There's nothing worse than indecision. And the entire organization feels that. If the person at the top of the tree doesn't know how to address something and doesn't articulate a clear path for the company, then it's very hard for everybody else to follow through and make anything happen, would be my summary.
I think there's also something I'd add as well around buy-in, that kind of client buy-in across the piece, because I think sometimes if you don't have it at all the levels, because you might not be seeing this CEO all the time, but actually if you don't have it at that level, then actually is that ever going to be successful?
Oh, absolutely. And the worst situation you can have is when the marketing team that we're reporting to aren't getting any clarity from the top, because then they don't know where they sit. We're giving our advice from our side. They're not getting any direction, strategic direction from the senior team, which in itself is a revealing comment, isn't it? Because why isn't the marketing team considered to be on an equal footing to the financial team, the HR team, and the strategy team? Yes.
But that's another debate.
That's another debate, yeah. But I think that's the major problem. If there's no consistency and no clear vision, then how can we help you get there?
Yeah, that's a good point. And do you think that clients' expectations have kind of shifted over say 25 years or even longer?
Oh my God, Clive. Oh my God. Can you remember the kind of monthly reports we used to put together for clients? The sheer volume of what we do, the variety of what we do, the range of expertise that we deliver now is just out of all recognition to what it was 25 years ago, wasn't it? You had a PR team who focused in on writing good content and developing great journalist relationships and being pretty good at organising events, which was one of your fortes, I seem to remember.
Yes, I did a lot of those.
I mean, now I've just finished a program for a client where we're doing a 3-month LinkedIn campaign with a series of what would have been described 25 years ago as ads, a whole series of them. And that's delivered in 1 month. Creative concepts, straplines, copy, assets, the lot, they're all gone in 1 month. And that's a typical month. It's huge.
It's funny, isn't it? Because that is a very, very different, it's a different model altogether, isn't it? And I guess you're having to evolve as an agency all the time. And if you're in-house, you have to evolve with all of this as well. It's a lot of speed, isn't there? There's a lot of change.
There is. That's kind of what makes it fun. I don't think I'd still be here all this time later if it hadn't changed substantially. And it's fun. And that's the challenge, I think, particularly for the in-house teams, where they might have one person with the title digital marketing who's expected to be able to keep up with everything. And we've got a team of 6 people whose job it is full-time to tell us what's changing on all the platforms. You know, how can an in-house person keep up with that? Which is obviously both our challenge and our opportunity as an agency.
Yeah, no, that's a really good point. And that's actually often where I get commissions, is actually when people are like, oh, we just need to have an idea on what's happening on LinkedIn. It's like, yeah, I am on there every day. But you know what I mean? So, but I love following the platform and learning all about it. And I think you're right. It's that thing of I can scan the market and go, this is what you need to know and what's going on and share that with people, because you're right. In-house, you've got so many different levers to be pulling. It is, and it's just growing all the time, isn't it?
Exactly.
So when it comes to strategy and tactics, how do you find that clients are, I guess, how they tackle it? Are they doing it well or not so well?
Oh, that's such a good question. Because most of the times often when we get a brief, the difference in definition between strategy and tactics is one that isn't always very clear, and that you can find somebody defining their strategy as being, we need a new website. What's not a strategy? That's a tactic. What are you trying to do? So the best way for us to work with a client is to understand what your end goal is, because that's the strategy. What's your end goal? Are you trying to reach this new market sector. What's your strategy? Are you going to undercut your competition? Are you going to be more technically adept? What is your strategy, and how are you going to convert that target audience? And then it's up to us to work with the client to understand the tactics you need to achieve that result. So that's actually a really good question. And it's one we've always struggled with in pitches. Do you remember those pitch documents that used to have strategy at the beginning and then tactics? And we'd all spend hours wrestling over, is that a strategy or a tactic? So you need to be clear right at the beginning where your argument sits.
I think it's that, but it is, you're absolutely right. And I think one of those things for me is that, like, I always kind of think of like your strategy is your kind of your northern light, your guiding star kind of thing of like, this is where we really want to go. But then I also do, but I think my main thing is that most clients aren't searching for strategy because they don't think they need it. And I think there's that kind of weird, there's always this disconnect, I find. It's like when you start talking to someone, you're like, okay, so you need a new website, but actually, why?
But why? Yeah, but why? Yeah, absolutely.
But why? So what? You know, and that is actually, that conversation is the thing that takes you above back into that strategy bit. But I think it's also finding a way for clients to kind of value the strategy and the thinking part, which I think agencies and in-house and any consultants like me, I think that's the hardest part to kind of say to someone, actually, we need to do this thinking beforehand before you move, because I feel like people take strategy and they go, actually, I don't need this. We should just be focusing on moving and doing tactics of doing, as I always say. But I think there is this whole thing around actually the strategy and the thinking part is probably one of the most important aspects. And that will carry you through for years once you've had those hard conversations.
And it depends where as an agency you're brought into that process. Because if we're being, and we can fit in various different ways, of course, if we're being asked to be the delivery partner, because the in-house team has really worked out the strategy, understood the target audience, knowing what their messages are, and we're basically given a brief saying this is what we want to say to that audience. Happy days, we'll get on and implement it. And that's great. And that does happen, and we can do that very efficiently. The ones I tend to get more involved with are the ones where that thinking maybe hasn't been completed. And we're asked to do a series of tactics, like how much would a PR campaign cost, or how much does social media cost? And my question to that would be, well, where does that fit within your overall strategy? And that can reveal the fact that maybe, as you say, maybe some of that thinking isn't complete. And that would be a good point for us to be able to advise. Sometimes as an agency, we give away that expertise for free, because what we're actually looking for is the delivery activity that is our bread and butter. And actually, we shouldn't.
There is value in strategy. There really is.
Value in doing the thinking right at the beginning, yes.
But I love about the strategy is, you know, when you look at a client and they suddenly come back and go, I used what you said in a meeting and I've done this. And you could see it just kind of, it all starts to connect. And I think, but you have to do that thinking beforehand to really kind of get under their skin, really. And I think that's the part where people don't necessarily realize that is what they need, and that's what they should probably be.
No, and sometimes it's a kind of a softly approach. So it's not unknown for us to make some quite strong recommendations one year and to find they've cropped up in the plan the following year. And you go,
I have to admit, like when I worked in the marketing team at Mace, one of the things we would say is that you drop an idea and then in about 3 years later, you'll see it in the business plan. And
My point precisely, yes. And that's fine. We're an agency. Our job is to make our clients look great. So if the marketing team that we're reporting to has taken an idea and it's flown, fantastic.
Yeah, and that's what we want to see. We want to see people do well. So I guess as an agency, how do you kind of balance the whole kind of the brand piece of Ridgemount and having to get out and win work? I'm going to say for yourselves and business development.
Well, that's also an interesting one, because I think the thing we're weakest at as an agency is marketing ourselves. So funnily enough, what we've done at the moment is we've commissioned another agency to look at our branding and our proposition, because although obviously we could do it, we never do, because it's never the number one job on the pile, because the clients always come first and you don't get around to looking yourself. So we've employed somebody else to do it for us.
So back to PR and kind of reputation. So at the moment, there's quite a lot of kind of talk about with the kind of advent of AI that PR is back in vogue, and media, that whole kind of PR is kind of back in vogue, and you need it because the LLMs are pulling from magazines and titles. So what do you think makes PR valuable nowadays.
Your definition of PR there, from the way you phrased that question, being media relations, yeah?
That probably is people's most traditional definition, even though I know it's not the right definition.
It's a very important distinction. But let's take that question in the way you phrased it and talk about media relations. I've said for some time that I think the pendulum will swing back when people realise that they need that trusted gatekeeper, if you like, between what we're trying to say and what their audience wants to read. I was really hoping that would happen faster. I don't think it's happening yet, actually, because I thought it would happen with the national press. Okay, so let's take the national press as the example and the whole freedom of speech thing. To my generation, we grew up thinking that freedom of speech was absolutely what we believed in. We would have campaigned for it. We live in a democracy. Freedom of speech is what we want. Turns out we didn't want freedom of speech. What we actually wanted was a free press that was overseen with some moral compass, i.e., it had people whose values we fundamentally agreed with going, what's going to be our guiding principle editorially? So little things like checking your facts, not slandering people, keep those kind of things. That's the kind of controlled free speech that my generation believed in. What we've got now is free speech, and it looks horrible to people like me. You go out and have a conversation with somebody who's getting passionate about their views on something. How often do you unpick it and go, where did you read that? Where did you see that? Why do you think that? What are their sources? And I would like to think that people were starting to understand the rubbish that we're all being fed and were lining up behind organisations that still had some sort of editorial integrity and value. But I'm not really seeing that at the moment. Remember, one of my interview questions for people that I used to employ was always, what newspapers do you read? Well, I've had to stop asking that question a long time ago. But I ask all my staff and people that we interview, where do you get your news from? And how do you trust the sources that you're using? Fundamental one, Wikipedia. Wikipedia was one of the first online information sources to come out, wasn't it? And all my team had Wikipedia at school, and they were all warned, don't use Wikipedia because it's not reliable. And we've all treated Wikipedia with a certain amount of skepticism ever since it's been around. Well, it says that on Wikipedia, but I better just check that first. Wikipedia is one of the most reliable news sources in the world because
it's really hard. It's really governed.
And it's really well controlled because it's got a whole pile of people who are interested in getting the facts right, making sure the facts are right. AI comes out, which has no such controls, scrapes things from the internet with absolutely no way of checking whether that information is correct or not. And suddenly everybody's treating it like it knows all the answers. And it absolutely doesn't. We will all get tired of that eventually. And we will all start to see that all AI is doing is scraping the answer that it thinks you most want to see with absolutely no reason for you to assume that answer is correct. I would like to think that's the case. I'm not really seeing it yet.
Are you a practice leader who isn't getting the industry profile that you deserve? I often hear from practices who do brilliant work but aren't actually getting the visibility they need to get business through the door. Practices that influence the sector aren't necessarily the best at design. They're often better at positioning their expertise and getting it seen and valued by those with budgets. I'm Ayo Abbas. And for 24 years, I've helped leading built environment firms build the recognition and authority that their expertise deserves. Drop me a line at ayo@abbasmarketing.com, which is AYO at ABBASmarketing.com, to set up a call where we can talk about how I can help you get a strategy and plan in place to get you to where you deserve to be. It's really interesting. I think the whole critical thinking thing is massive, and being able to look at something and think, what are you trying to do? I mean, like, you've got like AI and it's basically there to kind of tell you you're fantastic and what you're doing is great, right? It doesn't, unless you tell it, be honest, right? And you have to keep telling it.
No, I love the fact that it's always polite to me.
No, but it will always go, Anna, that's a fantastic idea.
Yeah,
is the sky green? Oh, yes, it is, Anna. Of course it is. That's a fantastic idea. Maybe we should turn it green, but that's why it's there, because it's like anything, isn't it? Like you go on, you know what I love doing actually is they slightly bursting the social media bubble of my son, who's 10 years old, and sort of going, you do realize that's an ad. You do realize that someone's put that there. And like, you know, like just actually making him realize when he's going online on that YouTube channel or whatever, that, you know, someone's paid them to go to that store, or someone's, you know, when you realize how much these people are earning. Because I think that whole criticalness and understanding that these algorithms or whatever, they want to keep you online. They want to show you more stuff so that you're outraged and you stay on there, and how they make their money. And I think until we start to kind of, as a society, really acknowledge that and go, actually, if you're reading media from here, this is what it's doing to you. And it's a big fight. And I think it's a massive fight because they've got such deep pockets. But yeah, so kind of got slightly off topic.
Yeah, it was slightly off topic because your question was about, do you think there's a drift back towards some kind of editorial controls in the information that's in front of you? I would like to think so. I'm not sure I do yet. And that's a big issue for all brands. But what it means to me is that you have to spend a long time building up trust in your brand, because trust is the biggest issue. If people trust you as an information source, and that isn't something that happens overnight. And you can build up trust in your brand if you're consistent and your messaging is accurate and you're telling your audience things they're interested in that helps them do their job. You can build up, and that's your sweet spot. If you can get to the stage where your audience thinks, I've seen a piece of content from this organization, actually, that's usually informative, interesting, and helpful. Brilliant.
Yeah.
Don't forget, I've worked all my life with product manufacturers, and getting product manufacturers coverage in any of the trade journals has always been a challenge, hasn't it?
But back in the day, we had, I don't know, do they still have the colour separation charges? I remember those. They're like 100. No, I do. That's what I remember. It's like you had to do that. I think we even had a fax machine. But anyway, but like I do remember that. And I think there is that line, isn't there? And that's that line which we've got now, which is between the paid and organic, right? And it's like kind of, you can't not, publications still need to make money and keep in business. And I think that's where it's all kind of, the blur is happening as well, isn't it?
Well, yes, absolutely. And that was always the case, wasn't it? I mean, it was less overt back in the day, but there was always a link between who paid for advertising and who got PR coverage. And that's no different now. It's perhaps more obvious, but no different. And again, advertising on a digital platform, what is that? I'll make no bones about it. We use paid social a lot to get messages in front of people. It's just a different way of getting the message there.
Yeah.
What matters is what you're saying to them. So that's why I struggle with the difference between advertising and PR. Well, I don't struggle. I'm very clear on where I am on the issue. Other people are less so. If I'm using a LinkedIn post to get my message to a very select target audience that I've built on LinkedIn, if the message happens to be a 300-word feature and what I'm looking for is people to read it, and I use paid to get there, what is that? Is that advertising or PR?
It's a very blurry line,
isn't it? Yeah.
And that is where we are. But also, if you've got clients, particularly product manufacturers, who you, like you said, can't necessarily get the traction in the journals in the same way as an architectural firm or whatever, or a consultant can, then it's like, actually, we still need to get that message out there. And as an agency, you also need to report back, right? You've got to show the impact of your work and their business.
Yeah, and that to me is one of the best things about digital. Back in the day when we used to do our coverage reports to clients, and you'd go, do you remember we used to list it? You got page in here, you got page in here, you got a quarter page in there, and we'll add up all the circulation and we'll say that's roughly the number of people that could have seen it. And we'll, some agencies used to add a percentage on for editorial integrity, and we'll give it an advertising equivalent cost. And it was all a bit hooky, wasn't it? It was the best we could do at the time, but it wasn't terrific. What I absolutely love about digital is if you've got your mechanisms and your tracking set up properly, you can demonstrate who's read what and how long they've spent there. I mean, it does depend on your being able to set up your analytics and tracking properly, but to being able to demonstrate that you've had that many people have spent this long reading that piece of content means you can show you've done your job. I've got that message in front of them and they've read it.
Yeah. And you've got those lag indicators, haven't you, of, traffic and looking at their overall kind of what's going on across that business from that campaigning activity you're doing. But you're right, measurement has just gone off the scale in terms of what you can measure now and what you can. And I have to admit, one of the things I love is when even just showing clients their Google Analytics dashboard and they suddenly go, oh, we actually have metrics. It's like, yes. these things existed. Someone just needed to set them up. But you know what I mean? It's just
Yeah,
like,
exactly.
I mean, I spend a lot of my time working with engineers and they like numbers. It's like I show them numbers and they're like, oh my God. It's just,
Well, numbers can be very compelling, can't they?
they certainly can, especially if you want more budget.
And the way the social media channels are evolving is really interesting because the way they're starting to try and authenticate the numbers they're showing you is quite interesting. If you look, I mean, you're on LinkedIn all the time, so you can see what they're doing in terms of trying to bring some genuine rigor to the numbers they're giving you, which is very welcome as far as I'm concerned. So and terminology is really important, isn't it? How many link clicks? Well, what do you mean by a click?
Is it an impression? Is it not? Is it that?
What's
Yeah,
different
yeah.
between impressions and reach? And the terminology is tricky, especially if you're reporting to a marketing team who isn't always focused on digital marketing, and why should they be? It's not their specialization. But to be very clear about the language that you're using and what you mean with the numbers, because you can easily bring in all sorts. I mean, you can make a number look however you like, can't you? But what do you actually mean, and what are you trying to achieve with that piece of content? And you have to be really clear.
But also what it means to that business. And I think some of the best digital campaigns I've done is actually, I remember that we were reporting to the marketing team all the kind of metrics behind what was going on with the campaign. They had all of that, but actually what they took to the business was actually, we've had this target account has kind of seen this content this amount of times, that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And that was all they took up senior level. But actually what they were doing for themselves was they had all the metrics for themselves. And I think it's just that conversation and what your business is expecting and what will really keep them engaged, right?
And that's one of the core skills nowadays, is figuring out what to report and how to set it out in a way that isn't just loads and loads of numbers. Here's the numbers, but what do they mean?
Yes, what does this mean? What do we need to do next? And I think that story, it's that narrative around your numbers, which is always lovely. So what should, in your future, Anna, I'm going to talk about the future. So what should firms be investing in now for the next 5 years, in your opinion?
What should firms be investing in now for the next 5 years? The first answer that came to mind is understanding how to use AI effectively, because that's something that we're all dealing with. I mean, a fantastic resource, but only if you use it properly. But also I've put, don't get too distracted by the shiny stuff. The fundamentals actually don't change. So keep faith with some of those fundamental core skills that you actually need about understanding your market, your audience, and your messaging, because those are actually still the most important things.
Yeah, I agree. It's like who, what, where, why, how. I always think that's just such a kind of that stuff.
That used to be How to Write a Press Release edition 2.0, wasn't it? Put that all in the first sentence and you're done. And that hasn't really changed, has it? Because you're looking at social media posts now and the same discipline applies.
Exactly. But actually, I think you can also apply that to like who you're talking to, what you're doing, like it's still the same questions. And I always kind of frame it around that, because I'm like, actually, as long as you're doing that, then you understand where you're going. And I think that's really important. So what things like, oh my gosh, why did I write that question? What will we laugh about in 10 years' time?
Yeah. Early digital marketing. I think probably. One of the most fantastic things about having a long memory and a good computer system is you can look back at the pictures you were writing 8, 9, 10 years ago and laughed your socks off. I think we used to win business like that, but haven't things moved on? Haven't the range of technologies, the range of the skill sets we can offer, just even how the presentation looks? My God, that was an acceptable form of presentation 15 years ago. It's not now.
It's funny, you don't realise though, do you? Until you actually look back and you suddenly go, oh my gosh.
I know, it's very reassuring because you think actually we're quite good at what we do.
So what skills do you think would matter most to marketeers coming through? So what do they need to kind of gem up on?
Well, it's sort of reiterating what I've said before. I don't think the fundamentals have changed. The delivery mechanisms are what have changed, but that shouldn't overwhelm consistent strategic thinking. And that's the bit that we're all struggling with now, because every tactic that we're doing is so fast moving and fast changing that it's easy to lose sight of actually having a clear strategy and a clear vision for what you want your brand to be doing. You did ask an interesting question, or you were going to ask an interesting question, which you seem to have skipped over.
Which is what I always do.
About how you balance brand versus business development goals. And I think that's really interesting at the moment in a tough market, because what happens in a tough market is, or seems to be what happens, is companies tend to shift from doing brand building towards lead generation because they suddenly need sales now.
Yeah.
I've always thought counterintuitively that's kind of the wrong way around. The time that you really need to be investing in your brand is now, when the market conditions are tough. Because if you can grow your brand awareness and grow your brand value now, then when the market picks up, you'll accelerate straight out of it. So always, but you can say that until you're blue in the face. But faced with do I cut my marketing budget, or do I lose a member of my team, you know which way you're going to go.
Yeah, and it's also that brand building thing about brand building versus performance, isn't it? Performance marketing, actually. Yeah, the short-term leads are going to take longer to convert because they don't know your brand, so it's going to cost you more.
That's exactly my point. If you're trying to sell something on the back of low brand visibility, it's much harder and much more expensive. If you've got great brand visibility and your audience has a clear understanding of what your brand is, then selling your individual products and solutions is cheaper and quicker.
Absolutely. On that lovely note, thank you so much for coming onto the show, Anna.
Oh, that was fun.
I hope you enjoyed it. I'll put links to Ridgemount and also to Anna in the show notes. Thank you.
Cheerio.
Thanks so much for listening to the Built Environment Marketing Show. Don't forget to check out the show notes, which will have useful links and resources connected to this episode. You can find that on abbasmarketing.com. And of course, if you like the show, please do share it with others on social, as it helps more people to find us. See you soon.